It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Joining us now is the great Harvard Law School professor emeritus, and of course his book is The War Against the Jews, Professor Alan Dershowitz. I mean, we're sitting here all rolling back, another indictment. It's like, I mean, come on. Your reaction, first of all, how much is this all politics?
Of course, it's all politics, and the question is, can it be turned to Trump's advantage? If I'm Trump and his lawyers now, I'm sitting and saying to myself, they're going to try to speed this up and get a verdict before the election. Do I oppose that, or do I support it? Will it help or will it hurt with independent voters if they see this kind of piling on? Look, the day the Supreme Court heard the argument on immunity, remember that Justice Barrett told lawyers for the government, you could easily re-indict him now. Just don't charge him with anything presidential. Charge him only with conduct that was not presidential. They could have done it then, 6 months ago, and now they wait till the eve of the election to do it. If I were Trump's lawyers, I'd move to dismiss on the ground of what's called technically in the law laches. That is delay, undue delay. They waited too long to clean up the old indictment. They could have done it literally 5 minutes after the argument in the Supreme Court.
I think I'm going to make one statement. I think this is racist because educated people know this is a lot of crap. Mm-hmm. And uneducated people that didn't finish high school, those are the ones they're going after. So isn't that racism?
Well, let me tell you, it could be the opposite. If they got a jury in this case of Columbia students or of Michigan students or of NYU students, these highly educated snowflakes, these useful idiots, they could probably get a conviction. Look what's going on at Michigan today. They took over the student government, 18% vote. Hardly anybody voted, but they took over the student government, and they said, we're now going to defund all the clubs, including Ultimate Frisbee, ballroom dancing, unless you divest from Israel and boycott Israel. And they're trying to extort and hold these innocent students hostage to their anti-Israel bigotry. The question that I ask is, there is no group in the world less deserving of the sympathy of liberals, no group than the Palestinians. They are the most anti-liberal, the most fascist group. They kill dissidents. They kill gays. They specialize in terrorism. They turn down statehood on 7 occasions. There's no less sympathetic group. As Bobby Kennedy said the other day in an interview, they are the most pandered and pampered group in the world. And yet the left has set a litmus test. If you're not anti-Israel, if you're not pro-Palestinian, you can't support the environment. You can't support women's rights. Take, for example, Planned Parenthood. Do you know that Planned Parenthood of Northern New England has now issued a statement saying we're not only interested in abortion rights and birth control rights, we are now also interested in Hamas and Gaza. And unless you are willing to divest from Israel and support Hamas, we're not going to support you or support your organization. So Planned Parenthood is now on the side of Hamas. Gay rights are on the side of Hamas. Environmental rights are on the side of Hamas. It's unbelievable how the Palestinians have hijacked the entire left and turned the entire left into useful idiots.
Ed Cox.
Yeah. No. And what happens then when Hamas is wiped out? Are they wiped out too? They lose their reason for being? No, they'll go on to some other cause.
I like what the guy from Vanderbilt did. He told the students, we're not going to divest from Israel. You're not going to speak poorly about any group. He goes, you're going to class, period. That's why you're here.
But you know what? More colleges need to do that. Look what happened to Cornell yesterday. Cornell had the first day of school, and what happens? They took over the campus again. Yeah. These pro-Palestinian protesters.
The first question to Kamala Harris, when she has this debate, in quotation marks, the first question is, when you're president of the United States and your government is funding all this anti-Semitism in all these schools through federal funding, what are you, Kamala Harris, going to do about it? We know what Donald Trump's going to do about it. Now tell us what you're going to do about it. She will stumble and mumble because she doesn't want to alienate a single person in Michigan, and she will not be able to answer that question.
Yeah, the question is, will she be asked it? Also, sadly, Professor
remember how
Dershowitz.
she explained Russia and Ukraine. Russia's a large country.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Very, very sophisticated, yes. Right? Very sophisticated. Professor, what about also, there's also stories today that Congress, and people are saying this, that they need to start looking at who's funding these protests, like Iran.
Of course.
I mean, why is not more being done on that?
We know Iran is funding them. We know George Soros is funding them. Let me announce this one more time. Attacking George Soros is not anti-Semitic. It's pro-Semitic. George Soros is a horrible human being who himself is an anti-Semite, who did terrible things during the Holocaust, even as a young man, who hates Israel. So Soros is behind some of the funding. We know that. Iran is behind some of the funding. And Congress has the right to know that. First of all, Congress ought to pass a law like it has with the media. You know, you cannot own a television station if you're foreign. And they should have the same thing about supporting universities. Now, universities aren't going to like it. But Qatar has no place sending millions and millions of dollars to American universities and forming these Mideast studies departments, which are horrible. These Mideast studies departments are propaganda mills, and they have influence throughout the university. So Congress has an appropriate role to see who's doing the funding and whether they can be cut off. Congress has no obligation to pass funding that basically comes to the support of Iran and goes to the support of Hamas.
Judge Weinberg.
So, Alan, what do we do if we want to fight this fight to get the country's head straight again and do the right thing? Remember, who was attacked? Hamas wasn't attacked. Israel was attacked. How do we get the dialogue back on a narrative straight?
It's very hard. I just finished writing a book, which I'm going to circulate free. Another book.
How many books have you written? 50 what?
This will be 55, but this is a freebie.
He wrote one since the beginning of the show.
No, I want. So, Alan, what's this book about?
It's about how the 10 big lies that anti-Israel people are propagating on campus, and the factual answer to each of those lies. It's a pamphlet. It's going to be only 70 or 80 pages. It will have graphs.
Pamphlet's 3 pages.
Yeah, and it will answer all the big lies. You know, Israel is an apartheid state. Nonsense. Look who they rescued today. They rescued an Arab, a Muslim, a Bedouin. That's not what an apartheid state does. It's a genocidal state. You know what they did 2 days ago? They destroyed 6,000 Hezbollah rockets without a single civilian casualty. If they were interested in genocide, they could have killed thousands of Lebanese people and Palestinian people. And not a single civilian casualty. So I go through each of the 10 big lies that are being perpetrated on campus today, and I have documentary answers to each of them so that pro-Israel students can have answers at their fingertips, and we can put the lie to these.
Could you send copies to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, please?
Of course I will. Of course I will. I'll ask them to endorse it and see what they say.
Ed Cox.
No, I doubt they'll endorse it, Alan, but that's going to be a very powerful
I doubt they'll read
it. Yeah.
Well, Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much. We really
always
appreciate it.
I always love being on your show.
We love having you on. Thank you very much.